Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dynamic Character Productions. We are here with Lee. Mr. Wentworth will not count. How are you doing, Lee?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing
Oh.
okay. Got to watch everything back, got to re-experience the trauma, but we're doing well.
And as always, Lily is here asking the questions, and I am joined with Alex Trias, my co-host, as well.
And the number one lead stand of DCP.
That's right.
I will say, like, I had words in my prod chat when you got voted out because I was like, I wanted you and Andrew on this season for many reasons, but I was like, I wanted to see my friends play. I wanted to see you both succeed. And when you guys ultimately went out when you did, I was just like, well, fuck this. I wanted to see what damage Lee could do making the merge, and we were
I don't know.
deprived.
McKenna Inglis was really rooting for Lee. She had him on her team. So
Yeah, I don't think she had a choice. Like she kind of was like, well, I get between like three people to pick. I guess I'll take Lee. But no, I appreciate McKenna taking me.
listen, you were the first L off the board. That
I was, and I appreciate it.
there you go.
Okay, Lily, it's all you.
Yeah, I guess just to crack into it, the automatic question is, there's a theme of Trinity Falls 3. We see that the tribe gets split up into three tribes. What is your thought on three tribes versus two right off the bat?
Yeah, so I said this, I think, even in my opening application, but I prefer places where no one can hide because I know I'm not one of the people who ever can.
Mhm.
So I think, and it's a lot easier. Here's the thing: if you're on a tribe with only like 6 people as opposed to 10, you only have to flip like 2 people to vote with you, especially in a world where a tie means automatic rocks, which I'm okay with because I'm usually going to be one of the people in the tie if that happens. So that's fine. So I was actually very excited about that. I feel like I'm someone who really tries to maneuver in any circumstance. And so, had it been something where we would be hiding, I don't know what I would have done. And I don't know how, there's so many like this could have happened or this could have happened. But if you were to tell me to pick my poison, I would always pick the smaller, more tribes than having just two larger tribes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like a lot of people feel the opposite, especially me. I'm a person that hides, so we love to have
Yeah,
players
and
on.
that is why I you'd be like one of the people I'd be like, we are getting Lily first because she's here to hide. She's gonna make it to the end. She's gonna do well, and it's nothing personal, but like I envy the people who can hide because my personality just doesn't let me shut up. It doesn't let me not try in challenges. And if I'm the person that doesn't do well in challenges, people aren't going to be like, well, we shouldn't vote out Lee because he wasn't good at a challenge. Like, we should vote out Lee because he looks crafty and he wasn't good at the challenge and we lost and that's all the reason to vote him out. So,
So we can play
um,
a game together then, Lee. You won't go for me because I'm one of those people too that's like I've tried to hide and it just doesn't work.
It,
I,
it's
and yeah, yeah,
yeah,
go
it's
ahead.
something that Lee and I have had a discussion through multiple games about, and it's also like this idea of like you're either like your personality either exudes being a main character or a supporting
Or a
character, and
dynamic
Mhm.
or
character.
a dynamic
Or
character,
a dynamic character.
but
Yeah.
and when you are that person, it's very hard to hide that because it's just who you are naturally, and
Mm-hmm.
it's unnatural for people to hide the elements that make them who they are, especially because like, we all
Mm-hmm.
have this idea we're unique people. We want to show who we are, be our full selves, because that's how you build trust. But when you're someone who's more dynamic and you're someone who's more out
Mm-hmm.
there and in the front,
Mm-hmm.
it also paints a target on your back. And it's something that like a lot of
Yeah.
players like us have to just like we deal with it and we hope that we get far anyway.
Yeah, and I think Alex, I think you can attest, and I don't want to get into the
Yeah.
weeds of this, but I'm always someone that will try to get the larger players together. And I
Mhm.
think that sometimes that can come across as like a little bit like, well, who is he to say who the larger player is? But I think
Yeah.
I'm really good at saying like, let me unite kind of the targets because we know kind of where we stand in the game, and I've been someone that's kind of been not necessarily my reputation, but it's been a strategy that's really worked for me in the past. And so I think that that's probably something, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about the rest of the game, but I think that's usually who I look for, especially when we have smaller tribes, and it's easier to find those people when people can't hide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and a big part of what you kind of mentioned is we see right off the bat is you are dynamic, like you get this game, right? You know, you kind of figure out like the tricks, like we see you kind of trick the math solution, not in a bad way. It was
Yeah.
probably the smartest thing someone could do there. You know, you take it from the other tribe and kind of send it, but you say in the background, I'm redoing the math just to make sure.
Sure.
Do you think that you would still do this knowing the cast how they are now? That's just the way you play the game, or would you try to kind of dial back the I think tricks is a wrong word, but you know what I'm getting at.
No, I think trick is a fair word. I think, you know, I think one of the things is, you know, I will always do what I think is in the boundary of the game. And so I felt like this is something, it's like, well, everyone can see it. So it's not cheating for me to do this.
Mhm.
And I'm much more a results oriented person in the sense that, like, yeah, someone might be sketched by it, but I do believe that it helped us catch up and win when I did that. And so the fact that me doing that was the difference between us not having to vote someone out is great. And so I was just more like, we can deal with this later. Like, if people are pressed that I helped us win a challenge on my own tribe, that, I mean, then that's a problem within themselves, probably. But or just something I'm not going to be able to overcome.
Yeah.
But I think that also spoke to, I think one of the confessionals showed this. It was why I stepped up later on, because I was like, I don't want to just be seen as the crafty cheat. I want to be seen as someone who can also be useful. I mean, I think it comes out like later in the episode before, like the one word Selkirk uses to describe me as resourceful. And I mean, that's kind of flattering, but like, I think that that's the way I wanted to be seen, is it's like, yes, maybe I'm threatening, but it's always great if you're like, but we need them for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we were aiming for with the creation of the challenge. Well, not aiming for it, but like it's a thing that happens in real Survivor. If you hadn't been paying attention to the everyone showing their dice, or if it happened faster, you might, and people might not have been able to see it, but you were focused on what numbers people were showing, and that's kind of what happened. If they showed it
we
fast,
had a lot of time to focus on other things.
we did.
And
Absolutely.
it seems like another thing that you couldn't overcome, and I don't know if this has happened to you in the past, is, you know, you host something similar and people in this cast happen to know this information about you. Do you think that not only we see it change your interactions or your castaways interactions with you, but also how you kind of attack the game? How do you think that benefited you going in, and kind of, as we see, hurt you coming out?
I have a lot to say on this.
Yep.
I think one of the things that's really interesting to note, and obviously when people hear host, they don't really care what you host, but I host a game that you don't even vote people out of. So that's just really interesting that people are going to be threatened by that. I mean, maybe that actually works against me because I host a game that's a little bit more like brainy and analytical, and that's fine. But I think, yeah, I think it paints a target. I mean, I think, honestly, I think my funniest like B plot of all of this was that there were so many people that were like having like the right conclusion but the wrong read. Like, I remember like Ben being afraid of me because I would know, he thought I would know who his friend was. I was like, Ben, I don't know who your friend is. Or you know, seeing like Mike get voted out first, and he's like, all these people were threatened because they watched me. It's like, Mike, no one watched you, you know. So I think it was probably the right conclusion to think that I was threatening. But I think some of the things, it's like, oh, because he hosts a challenge, he's probably really good at all of them. I don't think that's what makes me good at challenges. But I think, you know, if I see a host in a game, I'm usually concerned, like, have they hosted all these people? Are they connected? And I don't think that being a host made me connected to those people. But I think it's kind of like a right conclusion, wrong logic to get there.
Right.
I do think, yeah, I think I told Alex before ever stepping into this, I was very nervous because, you know, if people do recognize me, I don't have the luxury of not being recognized. But the problem is a lot of times people don't even know what they recognize me from or for or what I've done. But that's just that just comes with it. Like I knew going into it, I think the kind of target I could be going in with, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the like playing more in the front, not being able to hide. The hosting side is not really something that I am bothered by being targeted for. What I'm bothered for being targeted for, I see Alex's expression change, is I think that the culture of targeting people because they've played games before is really interesting, from the newbies and also from one returner in particular, who I had previous history with, Jon. And I think it's interesting. And I would just say, because it's like, I'm not mad at that, but like, I think it's a good cautionary tale to like people who are newer in games, that you don't want to target people for being someone who has played before, because what you are doing is you are setting a cycle into motion where eventually that will be you. And you are enabling this cycle where it's like now you come in and this is your third game and everyone's like, I've seen this person play games before. We need to vote them out. And so I think it's like one of those things where you kind of have to stop that cycle. A little surprised to see Jon also jump on that train, but do what you got to do, I guess, to survive. But that's the one thing that I think I feel a little strongly on, is that yeah, and there were other people that were, you know, org vets or game vets, and sometimes they hit it a little well. Like Luke hit his history pretty well, and I'll give him that. But I think he was also not one of those people that's pushing like we need to vote out people who have played games before. I just think it becomes a dangerous cycle if you ever want to play games again, that if you start throwing that out there and manifesting that energy, that, you know, you're not going to be very successful when you come back.
Absolutely. And like Lee and I have had plenty discussions about this, because like we have different, like we don't so much have different philosophies, but we have different perspectives of the idea of when you go into these games and it's not going to be all brand new, like doe-eyed babies like playing the game that are new to this org world. Like you're going to always have this weird mix of new players, people that have only played one game or two games, or people that are very seasoned, have a lot of games under their belt, have a lot of placements under their belts. I feel like from a game philosophy, game experience shouldn't be what gets you targeted, or lack thereof shouldn't be what gets you targeted. But it's something where it's like, if you know this person, you know how they play, like that's something that like, okay, noted, have that in the back of your head in the event that you see shifty behavior.
Yeah.
See, here's kind of where I like waffle on it. I think it's like if you have some evidence, if you're saying like Lee's played and I know that he's a snake, he's a liar, that's a valid reason to get someone out. Lee's played games before, which is what you hear in a couple of confessionals, and it's like that's enough. That's enough to take a shot at someone. He's just played games before.
It just might not have been like, depending on from the person. So if it was like maybe Jon or Emily who has played with you, like Lee has played games before, like it might not have been vocalized. I know he might be snaky.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, and the history
depends
with
on
Jon
how
and
they
Emily is
phrase
rich.
it.
Yeah, the history with Jon and Emily is rich.
I also think it's hard in like a mini format, and this is what we see in this format versus maybe like a little bit of a longer game, is you don't have time to really connect with these people. So if people are connecting in a different room over never having played before, and you come in, it's hard because they've already decided to connect over something you have really no choice about, you know? And we talk a little bit about it with previous people. Sometimes it's Harry Potter, or, you know, in your case,
Seattle.
Seattle, exactly. And we do see people kind of, like you mentioned, Jon, navigate these things differently, but it is harder for you because you weren't able to control the narrative of playing games before.
Yeah.
It is harder in this type of format because you can't connect over something that is really, it's like, oh, where do you work when you meet somebody? You know, it's like that's the first thing people talk about in these games. So
yeah.
definitely.
And I just had the, unfortunate bad luck of being kidnapped as soon as the swap started, and then the next round you don't even get tribal immunity. So it's like the series of unfortunate events that kind of led up to that. It's hard. And then on top of that, just we were talking about scramble rooms, but then you get like 2 scramble rooms. So it's like, well, I can either tell everyone here who I'm voting out, or either tell everyone here who I'm voting out. But either way, I'm going to have to tell the people I want to vote out, I want to vote them out. So it's really interesting. I will say, like, I think, again, I'm very aware of what I was stepping into and kind of the uphill battle I was probably going to face with the more newbies I had. And as soon as I saw Jon, I was like, well, shit. But yeah, I think if people are just a little like, I don't know, it's hard to be mindful of your surroundings and the situation you're in, and in a mini format, just like you suggested, Lily. It's hard.
Well, I just want to thank you for knowing what you were stepping into and still deciding to play and give our game a shot. So just want to say thank you for that, and playing the game as best as you could.
Of course. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was wild to think, because I think even if you're just watching it and you weren't there, to think that by the time I got voted out of the game, we were like 6 hours into it. And so I had really felt like so much of the game had passed by. And I remember getting out of the game and thinking, I was like, I haven't eaten today. I was like, I'm just so excited to eat. I'm so excited to like take care of my dog. But it was one of those things that was like, wow, you don't realize like until getting out. And I mean, the editing shows like we clearly spent a lot of time in this, but it was fun. Like I felt like I had a full experience in the game, even though it cut just short of the jury. But yeah, it was fun.
Yep.
And to kind of close out this great discussion, you mentioned knowing people in the game, you don't really get to connect with them. Had you made it to merge, would you have tried to work with them, or were you kind of get rid of everybody that you've worked with before kind of guy?
Yeah, so I don't have a great track record for working with people that I know in the past. I have a better track record for burning them. And like viciously burn, and not like vicious, but I mean like doing it in a way that's like it doesn't end well for like just the way they thought and way I thought. And it's just I don't know, I don't really like to play with people I know. So even just starting out on the tribe that I had, I know that it wasn't like always mutual, but like Lydia and I connected very, very well in the beginning. And I loved the fact that Lydia was the person who I knew the best because I spent like 1 hour in a game with her once, and like we didn't even really interact, but it was like those kind of familiarity. But it was so nice starting with new people. And I think, even though like I was probably 4th or 5th on my starting tribe, like I don't think there's any denying that, like it was really nice to even swap and see Ben stick with me and see that probably my tribe would have stuck with me in any of those swap scenarios, because I think we really bonded well. So I really was committed to sticking with the newer people. Luke is someone who I've always really enjoyed as a person. Excuse me. So I mean, I don't think I would have actively gone after him. I've watched Lex enough to know that I would have been dumb not to try to take him out immediately. And by watched him enough, I didn't have to watch much to know that I needed to take him out immediately if I got the chance. Jon and Emily, I mean, the 3 of us played a game together about 7-8 months before. And almost the exact series of events happened. So it was just really funny to kind of see like me get voted out when I did. And I don't know what it is. Like Emily and I are friends, and I really, really enjoy talking to her, but I was like really trying to connect in some way with them, because I think there was always a part of me, I was like, even though I didn't trust Jon and I really didn't want to work with him, I did think, I was like, well, if people are clocking me as someone who is this vet who has this experience, maybe they're clocking Jon. And this whole idea of wanting to bring together these people with kind of bigger targets and threats, like Emily and Jon seemed like natural people to want to work with. And when you don't have a lot of information, you have to at least be willing to consider everything that's being thrown your way in limited time. So when Jon and Emily are pitching this 3, while it seems kind of unnecessary in hindsight, it's like you want to take the word for it. But I don't know. I feel like watching it back, like I feel like even though Emily, I think, was probably a little more paranoid of what she had done to me in the past, she seemed at least, I think, genuinely interested in a short-term thing, because she was throwing my name out so much in the early, but then it's in, and she seems like, I mean, even if it's just the idle threat, like, seems like she wants to try and roll the dice somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
she almost tied it up. So.
Oh, and I would have lived because Ben would have been safe. It would have been so good. And honestly, that was probably the best case scenario for me, as if that had happened. So to know that my fate in the game was left up to 50-50 odds, which is actually something I found out for the first time last night, because she
we
never
all
told
forgot
me
about it.
Yeah.
We all forgot about it until editing. I was like,
Emily and I chat very often, and she had never brought that up to me. And you'd think
she probably forgot.
Yeah. So I would have laughed so hard if she had told me. But it was just really cool to see how that unfolded and see how much she was really waffling and what she was going to do. I mean, I respect what she did. I would have respected either way what she had done, because I think that she was legitimately spooked, and it's the right play. I mean, you can think about like results oriented things, like had it gone to rocks, had she been rocked out, maybe that's not the right thing to do. But I think if you are spooked, there's always like an ounce of truth in something, or at least you have to always assume that there's an ounce of truth in everything that's said.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that there are probably a lot of opinions on what she did, but I get it, and I think it shows a little bit her experience. And I think just how smart of a player she is, that she was thinking of those things. Like, I think sometimes we can just look at it and think, oh, she was super chaotic, she was super messy, and she's wild. Her energy, she's a complete crazy person. I love her, but that was calculated. And I think that that's something that I'm really I'm really hoping people will see that side of her more, is that she's just a bit more calculated than she's been getting credit for so far.
I agree. And it definitely comes off in a different way that people aren't used to seeing a calculated decision be made. But it comes off in an entertainment way. And you know that better than anyone, is like, yes, you're playing a game, you're trying to win a game, but you're also like, you're trying to be entertaining at the same time. Like, you're trying to have fun, because if you're not having fun, like, then why are you playing? I do wish there was, because I was following everything that was happening during that round. I was jumping in between your scramble rooms for your tribe during that round, and I was there when like you, Jon, and Emily link up. And at that point in time, the way you guys were talking, I was like, if they all understand, it's like, this is a perfect opportunity, especially for Jon, who didn't have a lot of trust with his original tribe, knew he was fourth of it. And I was like, if they all come together, they bring in Ben, they vote out Sarah or Austin, it really doesn't matter which one. Like, you guys go in, now it's this force that you can still sort of hide it all and sort of like create your own level of chaos and paranoia. Because what's the only thing bigger than having a person who's out in front is having multiple people out in front where you don't know where the direction's going to go.
And it was such like, and I think that's the reason why I think at least Emily and I were willing to kind of put aside the past, was because knowing the field we were up against, like, these were smart people we were playing with, but they weren't experienced gamers. And the plus of that is that no one would have ever known that we knew each other, because we came from separate tribes. They never would have known that we would have played together. And had we actually stayed together, I think we could have at least gotten away with a bit. I don't know how long, because I think it's three very paranoid players
Oh
that
my
you're talking about.
God.
But and so I don't think it would have gone on very long. But I do think, it was kind of one of those, like, I didn't really want to, but why not? And I think that was in that moment. And it was very serendipitous that even the three of us were able to just link up the three of us in a 2 scramble room scenario. It's like, why are we not doing this?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think going into that, like, I had every reason to try to believe it, but I still didn't believe it. But you're just trying to say yes to everything you can, because you have so little space, so little time.
Yeah.
And you just have to hope that your yes is the yes that sticks with everyone else.
Yeah. And I know you briefly touched on it, but just wanted to close out the thought of how, you got stolen when your tribe went to their first tribal council without you. How do you think that, in conjunction with not going to tribal before this one, really affected your game and your ability to gain trust with your tribe members?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you see it happen in the episode, because there's a point where Jon and Emily are talking, just the two of them. Maybe Austin was there, I can't remember, but he wasn't really part of the dialogue.
Mhm.
And the dialogue is, they're really trying to figure out which way they should go between Sarah and I. And I think it's Jon that brings up, but Lee has been over with the other tribe and he's made all of those connections. And so not only did I not have the round prior to make the connections, but now I'm seen as guilty for having made all of these connections on this other tribe that I wasn't even going to be a part of. And then further on top of that, this new tribe that I'm about to rejoin just had a time where they voted together. So they've already pronounced a little bit of trust, at least Austin, Emily, and Jon did at that point. And that makes it really hard to step into that situation and try to shake up the status quo when Sarah is coming back, who has this already existing trust with Austin and Jon, and Ben is now safe. Ben is like the perfect option to turn them on, because he just voted against Austin. And I think had Ben not been safe, I think we would have seen a different result there potentially.
I think we probably see Ben go home.
I mean, and there's a lot of scenarios, like, would he have actually tried for the idol had he, not been safe? We don't know. But I think coming into that, it was really difficult, because I think had I been a part of the original swap tribe, I think had Emily, Jon, and I had the exact same conversation that we have around later, it might actually be a bit more trusted. And it would be like, well, let's at least see if we can do this, because, if they still don't have Sarah, then Jon is already down a number and needs some people to vote with him.
Mhm.
So I think you could very much see it, and you can run through all the scenarios, but I would have to imagine that the kidnapping was in fact the undoing of my game.
Well,
Right, because like I would also say the best way to keep people from putting your name in their mouths is being there so they can't put your name in your mouth, and being unable to be in any breakout room during that round. What's the topic of conversation is, well, who's the person who isn't here that isn't going to be involved in the vote? And that's Lee. And it's like, if you change the scenario, like say they took Emily instead of you, like it's a completely different story.
Oh, it's so easy to just be like, can we just vote out Lee or Sarah when they get here, because they are not here to defend themselves.
So when you were in that winner's scramble round with the Kirka tribe, I'm guessing I correct me if I'm wrong, didn't make crazy connections, because it's the other tribe and they're trying not to give you a lot. So like, I feel like I wouldn't vote you out based on connections to the other tribe, because you're all stuck in one room. You weren't able to scramble and like do smaller groups. So
and how much are you actually talking about when you don't have to vote people out? Like, people are just making small talk. When you're not actually having to vote people out, there's not a lot of strategy happening.
Yeah.
So again, it's just the perception of it all. And I think, unfortunately, I went back to a tribe where there's a lot of paranoid players, in Jon and Emily and Ben. And it's really hard to circumvent that, I think. And so, it's unfortunately just like a perfect storm of bad things happening, because the funny thing about it is, had my original tribe lost, I don't know what would have happened. I do think eventually, like, I think in my heart of hearts, I think had we eventually lost, Selkirk might have been the one to go, because we might have been like, we never want to be back here and lose again. And I think that Lydia would have fought a little bit harder for me to stay over him.
Yeah.
But on paper, I felt like I swapped into a good situation before the getting stolen and everything, because we had such an advantage there. So it's just really interesting to see, because I was like, for once, I was like, I actually feel really, really good about my position. And then the twist gets announced. And at the time I wasn't mad, because I was like, no matter what, now I can't be voted out. But, always thinking about the long term, I think I even say this on the tribe I get sold to. I was like, well, I'm getting voted out next. Like that's what's happening. So
Yeah, and I guess the last thing I want to touch on is the fake idol. I love a good fake idol play. I think it's really when you feel like your back is up against the wall. I think it's one of the better things you can do, especially given you were stolen. But we really only see in the episode you tell Ben. So talk us through how you were hoping telling Ben would affect anything going into tribal.
So this actually comes from a previous game that I played where this was an effective strategy, is that I wanted to even lie to the person I felt the closest to, because I felt like if he was backed in a corner, he'd be like, yeah, Lee has an idol. Whereas if he thought it was fake, he might be, oh, Lee's just telling people that, if he felt pressured enough, like, to have favor. So if, as far as he knew, then also he's not implicated in the lie. And so then I felt, then once you spring it on people, if you spring it on people really last minute, they don't have a lot of time to fact check you. They don't have a lot of time to do anything like this. But then Ben not looking surprised kind of corroborates the lie, in the sense that's like, Ben knew the whole time. And it does effectively get Emily to switch her vote, just not in the right direction. And that was always going to be the risk. I knew it was going to have to be kind of a calculated risk, and it may not pay off. But I think it was kind of like, it was the Hail Mary last straw. Like, I mean, that was all I could do. I think potentially it would have been a 4-2 otherwise. But it was kind of the last thing. It was never one of those things where I was like, I got this in the bag. But it was always going to be what I was going to do right there at the end.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that was funny enough, one of the questions on Facebook from a couple of our Pride members, and you actually said some of the words verbatim that are in the question. So it brings up my thing. We were talking about it before you came on, Lee. And I was saying, like, in a world where Ben tells you first, like, before you even say, oh, I have a fake, or not even fake, I have an idol, I found it at the other tribe. If he came to you first and gave you the information of, hey, I have a clue, I have a phrase I need to say at tribal, it will get me an idol if I'm the first person to say it, do you still then pitch it? Because I said there's a world where I think you would think maybe you could do like this big brain play where you get Emily in a room with both of you and you go, we can do the brochachas moment. It's a fake brochachas moment. You do not tell her it's a fake idol. All you have to do is say, Ben's going to get an idol. He has a clue to it. He's going to get it during tribal. I have an idol from the other tribe. I'm going to play that idol on you to ensure you're safe. He's going to play it on me because he's immune. Let's do something now. And then I think in a world where you have paranoid players, and this is all something very easy to think about when you're not in the heat of the moment. I think in that moment, if you all say that at tribal, Jon flips. Because Jon's not going to risk going into either a rock situation or be the name.
Potentially. I think the biggest thing is just with the mini format, you just don't have a lot of time to craft all of that. Like, I was kind of just going by the seat of my pants. I think one of the things that was really hard there too is that it's so funny because I knew Emily was our best chance to get to flip her vote, which is funny because Emily should have known, even if the idol was played, she would have never been in danger because she knew who we were voting for. She was probably the only person, even though she didn't really give that away. And she was like, well, he said this and this and this. She knew who me and Ben were voting for. And so it actually probably didn't make sense in that regard. Like, if you're going to make any argument against her throwing her vote, that's the one, is that she always knew her name wasn't going to be the mark on our end, that she could have just let Austin go out and had her hands clean of it. But I don't know. I mean, I had tried very quickly in my head how I was going to play that through. I think the biggest thing is I kind of probably accurately clocked the fact that I don't think, even if Ben had gotten the idol, and even if he knew that I didn't have one, I don't think there was ever a world where he was going to play it for me. He is someone who, and I'm happy he does, plays a much more self-interested game. And I think that he was the player that also knew that if he got the idol, even though he was immune that round, he was going to need it later. So I think even if he had gotten it, I don't think I could have asked him to play it on me, and I don't think he even would have it had I asked. So, and I didn't have the time for him to come clean. I don't even know that he would have come clean to me unless I had said what I said. So
Right.
It's hard to kind of 3D chess the whole thing, but in that moment I just felt like I could see that things were probably flipping on me, and I was like, it clocked. And I'm so glad that you showed this part, because it's as soon as we say that Austin is the name we want to vote and Jon's like, I'm just going to go to the other room, that's when I knew it was not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, you also have a moment of just like, so no one's just like saying anything to me. This is weird.
Yeah, and I knew at that point.
Yeah.
But sometimes you say that stuff and you're just hoping like either people will like tell you and they're like, yeah, we're probably gonna do it. Like, I was thinking, like, can you get like a Rupert's wife Laura moment where she just ends up telling someone that, yeah, we're voting you out, and then they just flip it on her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that there's anything I really could have or would have done differently.
Awesome. But with that, we're going to actually go into the Facebook questions. We do have some questions for you. One is from Lydia. It's sort of a two-part, and we sort of touched on this, but I think this allows you to get a little more room here. Is what would you have done if they ended up pulling Emily during round 3 instead of you? Do you think what your plan would have been would have extended your game further?
So Austin went out instead of Selkirk.
Well, I can tell you for a fact, had they pulled Emily, I would have not voted out Austin. I would have voted out Jon. It would have been no question to me, because the thing that also I think is forgotten is that Austin and I had that time where we're hanging out in the immunity challenge holding room, and I actually kind of liked him. Like, we didn't get to talk that much, but I did like interacting with him. But I mean, I saw Jon, and it was on site when I saw him on the Zoom. I was like, if I have the chance or the ability to vote him out, I will. And had we not had the reunion with me, Jon, and Emily, like, had Emily been pulled, I would have tried to vote Jon out when Emily wasn't there to protect him.
Yeah. And yeah, in a world where Jon goes there, I think that does absolutely extend your game. Because I don't think, even if Emily says, like, at that point, like, oh, she doesn't want to do Sarah, like, you still even have the option of, like, well, we can vote out Selkirk if you needed to do something that wasn't you, or you have Austin, or you have Sarah. Like, there's options there for you where you don't have someone who's able to, like, sort of slither around the rooms like Jon,
right,
to sort of subtract any work that you could do.
Yeah. I think taking, if I had the opportunity to take Jon out of the equation without Emily in the tribe and having the knowledge I had, being the only person I had, I probably would have even blown up our previous game experience in that moment, just because I think it would have been to achieve an end there. But I knew that it was going to be a losing battle if I tried it, in my tribe situation. Like, if I had said, oh, Emily and Jon know each other and they were really tight, Boston and Sarah just gonna be like, cool, we have a great 4-person group that's not gonna break. And it would have been game over. So, but I think that it might have been easier to leverage that in a world where Emily is pulled.
Yeah.
Well, next question is from Stephen Bays. Essentially, it's like, do you think during the round that you go, do you think the first tribal council and how everything went down impacted your tribal at all? Or did everything sort of just stay the way it was going to go?
It might have confirmed to Emily she needed to throw her vote, because if she just saw one person get idled out, she probably got more jitters about the idea of someone getting idled out and her not wanting it to be her. I don't think that it flipped the vote on to me by any means, and I don't think anyone came into that tribal that is not Emily that didn't have their vote decided. And I don't think anyone was going to change because of that.
It caused Ben not to get the idol because he thought his was already taken.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't think he would have played it for me. So
well, we saw him wanting to save it for the next round.
And that's
himself.
absolutely
You had one.
But that's absolutely what he should have done.
Yeah.
My hope, I there was always a little bit of me that was hoping, like, if I don't play the idol, will he try to get it? But I had no idea exactly what he had to do. He just said he had to say a phrase, but I didn't know what the phrase was. I thought it was like exclusive for him. So then when Lydia got it, I wasn't even sure that was what she had to do to get it.
Yeah.
And so there were just a lot of things. And again, the speed of it all, the kind of the high energy of it all, you don't get to observe everything, and that's the thing we talked about, like me observing the dice and the challenge. That's one thing that I was able to take the time to observe, but most of the time you don't, like, everything is so high adrenaline, you don't have that focus to look at the other things happening around you.
Yeah. And then a little fun one from Stephen as well is, now that you have played with Jon and Emily for a second time and they cause you to go home again, would you ever try to work with them for a third time if all three of you play the game together again?
So I don't know. I mean, Emily and I have like, we're friends, and I really, really like her. I think that we could work together, but I also think that we start to appreciate each other's crackhead energy a little bit more now. I don't think that there is a world where Jon and I would ever work together, and that's fine. Like, we just are different kinds of players. I think that he just came in, and I think just as I was wanting to take him out on sight, I think he felt very intimidated by me and probably felt like I was out for blood, and I was. So I just don't think it ever works. Like, I think even if you're like, I'm over it, there's always that, like, in the back of your mind, but are they over it?
Right.
And if they're not over it, I got to get them. So it's just this cycle. So I think, especially in a mini format, you just don't have time to reconcile those differences and move forward. Maybe in a long-term game, but I would not put your eggs in that basket.
Okay. Yep. And well, to the next question is from Austin. And his question comes down to, do you think the vote would have been impacted at all if, instead of waiting till tribal to do your fake idol play, you went to everyone during the scramble phase and sort of let that be the talk of the round that you had an idol?
Maybe in the moment, yes, but when I knew what Sarah had, and when seeing that she was playing it, or seeing that she was telling people that she had it, I think that she could have been more calculated and being like, yeah, I can just play my nullifier then, and that's fine. And it almost maybe makes it harder to pull off, at least from what I know now. I truly think, where I kind of thrive in a situation like that, when I've been able to get myself out of sticky situations, it's flowing misinformation, but quickly and like late. So people don't have time to really recover from it. If they have time to compare notes or fact check or problem solve, then, the strategy's out the door. But if they don't have time to chat or be like, hey, how are we going to regroup here? Sometimes people just do things on their own and it doesn't always go with, it's not always the same problem solving approach that their allies would have made.
Yeah, for sure.
And I knew I just needed one person to flip.
All you need is one. We already answered Luke's question for a lot of it about past relationships. So we're going to go to our last two questions. They're a lot more, they're not game related at all, so they're fun. Carrie is asking you what your favorite cocktail drink is.
Oh, okay. So my favorite cocktail drink is, I love a good amaretto sour, but like if you're in the South, it's better to get it with like pineapple juice in it as well. It tastes just like candy. It's very good. So yeah, but always getting like a double tall one as well. Because you finish them very fast.
I actually just had that last month for the first time. That's a good choice.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
And then last question is from McKenna Inglis. If you were to have a movie adaptation of your life, who would you have play you?
It's funny enough, I was just asked this in jury questioning a few months ago. I don't know. This is the last time I don't have a good answer for it, but I'll tell you what I answered the last time and why. I said Tom Holland the last time because I was like, well, Tom Holland's attractive and people might actually feel like more compelled by him if they're like, oh, it's Tom Holland. But no, he's always finds a way to like make some of the most boring things interesting. Like I just saw the movie Uncharted and I was like, oh, that movie is actually, the story's very boring, but he makes it really interesting. But I really, not that I think I'm boring, but I've always enjoyed watching him and I always think he's been a really good actor. I don't know. I don't think that there's any actor I think that can really portray the story of me without it being like some like weirdo. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll go into acting and I can portray myself because, you know, I do love to be the main character. So why not?
Yes.
As long as you're dynamic, we'll support you.
I feel like if I'm one thing, it is dynamic.
Yes.
That's absolutely the case. But that wraps up our Facebook questions. Lily, I know you usually have one or two more extra questions.
Yeah, so my final question is, if you could sum up your game in one word, what would it be and why? Hyphenate it if you need to.
No, you're good. You're good. I like to follow the rule. Okay, so I would say unfortunate. I would say unfortunate because I think there was a lot where I was able to take my game into my own hands in the early rounds and just, you know, contributing strongly in challenges. But I do think, you know, I'm usually someone, I like to blame myself and I like to be really hard on myself, but I do think that, you know, the last couple of rounds were really hard to overcome what was thrown at me. And I tried, like I certainly did not, you know, just dig my hole and try to fall in it, but it was really hard to dig myself out of that from something that it was like a twist and the swap and all of this. And so, you know, and that's the nature of the game and that's what you have to adapt to. But I think it was just, I couldn't adapt well enough. So unfortunate.
Well, rather it was unfortunate or not, like I think it still needs to be commended as we wrap things up here to someone that was in the position and the cards that you were being dealt. Like I think a lot more people would have crumbled in that situation and sort of just like let themselves die on that story and be like, okay, well, I just got screwed. It is what it is. But
sure.
One thing that we know and that I know personally about you is that you're a fighter. You're always going to fight and have like while you're in you because you want to win. You want to have a good time, and that's why you were a very easy casting choice for us for this season. Like I know you're here to play. You bring the energy. You bring, whether you want it or not, you bring drama, you bring chaos. Like you bring everything with you, and that's why I will always be a Lee stan for life. But with that does wrap up this exit interview. Thank you so much, Lee, for joining us today. And remember, everyone, we have new episodes coming out every Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. We have our recaps on every Sunday with John David Millsip, where he has special guests every week and does his MVPs for the week. I don't know who they're going to be this week, so go watch it on Sunday. Do it now.
Spoiler, it won't be me.
You never know. You never know. But we also always will have our exit interviews shortly after the episodes air. And while you're at it, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and click that bell for all notifications so you know when new content drops. And also, while you're at it, follow all of our social media. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on our Facebook, Dynamic Character Productions, where you can also ask your questions for the exit interviews. You can vote for MVPs. You can put your thoughts in on the episodes, have more ways to know when new content drops, including our secret scenes that we've been posting on our Instagram recently. So you should go and watch that. All that will be at the end of this video. But with that, we are Dynamic Character Productions, and we'll see you next time.